Hi, my name is Devin, and I am an alcoholic. I am a member of CSCYPAA. We did just have our convention, and it went really great. It was truly, truly inspirational. It was only my second YPAA, so it was nice to be part of that. And it was nice to go to one in my home state and see all the people that got me sober, who kept me sober through COVID. Having a good time. But on to my actual story. My sober date is June 9th, 2020. I have a sponsor. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I have a service sponsor. Um, going back to just starting from the beginning, I guess. I was always kind of like a restless child. And looking back on it, I see a lot of kind of signs of compulsive behavior that I think were like early signs of untreated alcoholism in me. So while there's some things in my story that I think were like moments, like inflection points where the progression of my disease escalated rapidly in response to some of the things that were going on around me. Uh, it's my belief that I was quite likely an alcoholic from birth. So, like I said, I was a restless child. I would pace. I would overthink. I felt like it's a cliche, but I felt like everybody else had a script to the world that I didn't have. I used to like walk around this tree in my family's like yard for hours and hours on end, just like thinking. And I actually like wore a ring around this tree in the grass just because of me walking around it over and over again. Um, we moved around a lot growing up. My mother worked for Pfizer, and I don't know, there's not a lot of people from Connecticut here. There's quite a few of us in Connecticut who it's almost kind of like if you've ever heard the term military brat, we have Pfizer brats where I was from Michigan, moved to Ireland for a while, moved to Connecticut, moved to Tennessee, moved back to Connecticut. And I felt like I had more and more trouble making friends every single time that I moved. Like I just kind of got farther and farther away from people. So my internal family, my immediate family was relatively normal. My parents did a really, really good job providing for my brother and I. We had food, water, shelter, all the things that we needed. But they were very, very, very young when they had me. My mother was 21 when she had me. Um, and I feel like I don't blame them, right? They didn't know how to love me, and I didn't know how to like really be loved. And that's something I still struggle with till today and rears its head in a lot of my relationships. Or at least, it's starting to get better. My relationships within the program are better for sure. And by that, I mean friendships, sponsorships. I don't mean romantic relationships within the program. Um, so yeah, that's kind of just how my childhood was. Nothing super out of the ordinary. If anything, a better, based on what the majority of the human race experiences, a better than average childhood, I would say, or an easier than average childhood. The So next, I was in Connecticut, and I just want to talk a little bit about my first drink because I want to talk about the progression of my disease, how it got worse, and how it kind of took control of my life. And I think, that first drink for me was important. So my first drink of alcohol came maybe 3 to 4 weeks after my first time trying marijuana, and I've tried other drugs in my life, and I've had fun on them, or at least what I thought was fun. But let me tell you, when I had that first drink of alcohol, it hit like nothing had hit before, and nothing ever quite affected me the way that alcohol did again. Right? There's a difference between something that caused me to have fun and then alcohol, which just seemed to melt all my problems away. Right? No longer was I afraid what other people thought of me. No longer was I afraid that I might say something dumb. I was funnier. I was wittier. People seemed to like me more. I was able to let loose. I was no longer paranoid. I was no longer worried about, what schoolwork that I had to do the next week. And I was just really able to enjoy myself and enjoy my life in a way that I couldn't. And I remember pretty profoundly a comment from one of my parents, after I had started drinking, which was, you've really kind of started coming out of your shell, right? And it's funny because like from the outside in the beginning, my use of alcohol almost looked like a good thing. I had friends finally for the first time. My grades didn't suffer. They actually improved a little bit because my depression, wasn't quite as bad because of having friends and a social life. And during my high school years, I honestly didn't have many consequences for my drinking, which really set me up for failure down the line. Just had a lot of fun, went to a lot of parties, managed to get my grades together, go to college. And again, I'm going to kind of gloss over college because not much happened. I actually drank a little bit less. But yeah, so moving forward with like the progression of my disease and where things kind of started to get off the rails was I graduated from college in 2015. And the first like 6 months were fine. I was living with my parents. I was trying to get my own business off the ground. I wanted to start a consulting firm. I also had a radio show, which if you're listening to me now is really hard to imagine. I was not a very good radio host. So that didn't last very long. But in any case, the year 2016 was like, this is where like the red flags really started to come out. And a lot of them I still didn't see at the time. But I suffered a series of personal and professional, I guess, personal tragedies and professional mishaps. I worked the worst job that I'd had in my entire life. It was just miserable. It gave me anxiety. The person I was working for was, abusive to the point where it had like effects, literally on my health. Like my digestive system just shot itself on account and probably the drinking a little bit of dealing with this person. My little brother, actually, I guess I'll start. My boyfriend at the time checked himself into a mental hospital because he was thinking of killing himself at the beginning of the year. And then by the end of the year, my little brother had a suicide attempt, which thank God he survived, but it was really, really tough on me and my family. And my parents didn't handle it well. And my brother and my boyfriend at the time were really the only people, not that I don't love my parents, but those are like the two people that I really, really cared about. And to see them both suffering so much and the fact that they didn't want to live, I managed as an alcoholic to take that personally. It's like something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And that's why these people don't want to like stick around for me, which is really, really sick. But um, based on all that, and my relationship with my kind of parents deteriorating a little bit because I didn't particularly appreciate their emotional response to the situation, I moved out and I moved in with my boyfriend. At first, it was we were living with his parents, but we relatively quickly moved into our own apartment once I got settled at a new job, which I loved. And honestly, things like looking at my life from the outside, things really seemed to be going well. I had like the relationship that I wanted. I was engaged and eventually married. I got promoted at work a couple of times. And, but it was really masking what was a building misery. I was drinking every single night and eventually every single morning. And I would have called myself a functional alcoholic for a decent portion of this time. So skipping forward ahead, eventually, right? Like, I don't know, maybe some people can be functional alcoholics forever. I did not have a particularly long run of functional alcoholism. I was functional until I wasn't. And once I wasn't, I never was again. So drinking every day, drinking every morning, driving to work drunk in the morning. Somehow I managed never to get fired. But I did wreck my car once, managed not to get a DUI because luckily I hit an inanimate object and left the scene and came back for my car the next day, and nobody was any the wiser. My fiance or my husband at the time, in a drunken rage, destroyed our apartment and actually flooded the two apartments below us. My relationship became very abusive. Um, my significant other was a like very angry drunk and wasn't very happy with his life and would take it out on me. Um, and it's still something I wonder to this day, why I put up with for as long as I did. Um, so needless to say, things got pretty dark, but I think that's like more than enough information on that. So finally, I hit rock bottom. I kicked my husband out of the apartment and I decided to go to rehab. This was at the beginning of COVID, so it took a couple months for me to find one and get in, but I managed to do it. My lease expired because I couldn't get sober living on my own, and I moved into a sober house, which was by far the best decision I've made in my entire life. That was roughly 2.5 years ago. I've been sober ever since. And the reason I like mentioning a sober house is like, for me, it's like a really, really specific thing that I can point to that is a sign of my surrender. Like, I didn't want to go to rehab. I didn't want to move into a sober house. I didn't want to go to AA. I didn't want to go to get a sponsor. And all of a sudden, over a course of a 2-month period, I was doing all of those things. And for me, that's what surrender looks like. That's what admitting my powerless over alcoholism looks like, is, basically giving up a little bit of my freedom and my kind of control over my own life to, people who have gotten through the program. So, and it worked for me. Having a sponsor worked for me. I worked the steps, and eventually now I've taken other men through the steps. Service is a really, really important part of my sobriety. For me, that started in the sober house, right? Service can be very, very, very simple. For me, it was driving guys to meetings from the sober house. Sometimes there weren't guys to pick at the house I'm in that needed rides. So I found a sober house, a couple miles down the street. And that's actually where I met my first sponsee, who I love. My sponsor got me sober, but I think my first sponsee really saved my life, because bringing him through the steps, helping him get sober, and like being of service to another alcoholic really reframed the program and the steps for me in a way that I didn't understand before, right? All of a sudden I was helping this person, or trying to help this person. And it forced me to do the things that I was telling him to do, right? Because I didn't want to be a hypocrite. B, right? I've heard once that if you really want to know that you understand something, explain it to somebody else. So it helped me in that regards. And B, like, I have trouble sometimes loving myself as much as I love other people, which is a problem that I'm working on in the program. But there's plenty of days where it was, I really don't want to go to a meeting tonight, but I told my sponsee I was going to be there for him, that I was going to go meet him at this meeting. So darn it, I'm going to do it. And at some of those meetings, I heard the thing that I needed to hear to keep me sober and to help other people stay sober. So continued on in service. I'm a GSR in my for my home group, which is forever forever young. I go to two. We have never young and we have forever young, and it's very easy to mix them up. Forever young, I served as the treasurer for CSCYPAA this year. And like I had mentioned, that was like a really transformative experience for me because, you know, young people's meetings and YPAA really, really got me sober. I had always been very skeptical of people who are older than me. And that has a lot to do with my parents and a lot to do with people in my career. But luckily, I was able to find a sponsor with 5 years who was a year younger than me, who could show me the ropes. But like the other way that, young people's Alcoholics Anonymous really helped me is just fellowship. Fellowship has been hugely important to my sobriety. I learned to have fun again. I didn't know how to have fun without alcohol anymore. And going to meetings and then going out to eat afterwards showed me like, hey, I can sit and talk to people and they're interested in the things that I have to say. And I'm interested in the things that they have to say without any alcohol. And, and same goes for YPAA and the conventions. We had a dance the other night and it's like, wow, I can sit and have dance and like, maybe I look like an idiot while I'm dancing. Maybe I don't. It doesn't really matter because I was having fun and I was hanging out with the people that got me sober and people who were important to me and people who I'm important to them in their sobriety as well. And it was really, truly a beautiful experience. So anybody who's looking to kind of like, take their service to the next level, I highly, highly recommend getting involved in a YPAA, serving on a host committee, and it's there's something for everybody, whether it's designing t-shirts, sitting at a registration table, attending meetings to, ask people to come. Everything's really important. So I think it's like important to say that, right, my life isn't perfect today because I think sometimes, I hear people talk and it's like they have like the relationship again and the job again and they have everything they want. There's still things about my life, that I think, could be different. There's still things about myself that I'm working on. But like the most beautiful thing about this program, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that we're like given a set of tools, whether it be meetings, working the 12 steps, talking to our sponsor. For me, I find, working the 10th and 11th step, right? Practicing those daily inventories and those conscious contacts with my higher power and making sure that my intentions are in line with like my spiritual values. When I'm doing that on a daily basis, the way that this program and my sponsor tells me I should be, I can feel it. I act different. I treat the people around me different. And this program gives me the ability to work on that every day. And here's the thing is I really only have to do one thing is like not drink. And as long as I do that, then I get to wake up tomorrow and try to do better than I did today. And for me, that's like the amazing thing. So with that, I am going to wind down and share the time. Thank you for having me.